So Yo here from Big Five Fitness. I'm with one of my coaches, Zach. Thought we'd have a little chat about, pretty much want to check in where you're at with your fitness, where you started, what you're doing now, and etc. So, do you want to maybe just introduce yourself a little bit, and so we know who you are?
Yeah, well, most of you would know me anyway, but so my name's Zach. Kind of got a bit of a background for 5 or 6 years now in fitness industry. Started mainly with sport or performance-based training, and kind of recently in the last 2 to 3 years switched more to Gen Pop or most of our clients now, and just trying to increase health and lose a little bit of weight.
Yeah. So because when we talk, when you came into Big Five, which is about 3 years ago, you
Yeah.
started, a bit more actually. And you were into footy, umpiring at the time. Did you play footy
Yeah.
at the time, or
No, I think it was umpiring 3 years ago. Yeah.
because your background's playing footy,
Yeah.
right? That's yeah. So how did you end up doing what you're doing now? Because I like this story of you as a 16-year-old.
Yeah. It was kind of for me, like I wanted to play AFL football, kind of knew deep down it probably wasn't good enough. So I tried to find whatever edge I could back then, which was more performance. If I could get fitter, I could cover the ground a little bit better, get more of the ball and stand out that way. So kind of went on a journey as a 16-year-old, writing my own programs, trying to increase strength, increase speed, all those kind of related things. And then that grew from training myself to training a few friends, and then from a few friends to my footy team, and from my footy team to our club. And then I was like, year 12, why not make this a journey? And started doing my PT certificate whilst at high school.
So you did your PT certificate, and then you jumped into uni.
Yeah.
Which is so. What's your degree, or what's your?
Yeah, it was sports science and psychology.
Yeah. So you've done what, 5 years altogether?
4 years of uni. Yeah.
4 years of uni. Yeah. Which is and you're at the moment you're at the prime age of 23, right? So you got get into it early, because in for myself I started obviously not obviously I'm not sure it's obvious now that I was an athlete, but I started as an athlete myself and at a young age. There's no way I was doing my own programming though. I was bench pressing and doing lots of bicep curls because I was, what I thought was good.
Start out just bench and bench.
Yeah, bench and biceps. So you already knew that you wanted to be quite early on.
Yeah.
And obviously, like you mentioned before, you started with athletes, or that was your mindset. That's sort of who you wanted to train. And then you briefly touched on now training Gen Pop, which we call in the industry, well, I don't know, maybe it's everywhere people call it Gen Pop, general population, right? Which is non-athletes, or sometimes we like to refer to them or us as everyday athletes, where it's just about like athletes for life, or whatever you want to call it. So at the moment, why do you train? What's your purpose for training or working out?
It's a mixture of probably 3 different factors for me personally on why I would train. So first one is just to kind of feel good, look good, like kind of got a vision of where I want to look and trying to get to there. Second one will be mental. I just feel better. You feel more alert, feel awake, got more energy when you train. And third one is just because the health effects that you know from training that you get. My kind of 3 reasons.
With I think personally that majority of people, I'm not saying everyone, come in for the main reason is to change the way they look. Yeah. That I think is the main goal, at least 90% of our members. And then they might change, they might change that as we go through, and maybe when they start learning that it's not all about that. Some people even change it when they realize how hard it is to get to the way they want to look. Usually people have unrealistic expectations as well, because they don't compare themselves to themselves. They compare themselves to someone else that they've seen on Instagram. So you want to look like this person and, show me a but it's probably it's never going to happen because it's not you, right? It's not your body. It's not your shape. It's not your the way you will look, even if you do lose that weight, etc. Right? You'll look different. We all have different shapes of our bodies. We can't shape our bodies. We can affect how they look by gaining or losing, gaining muscle mass, losing body fat, etc. But it's still going to be determined. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think everyone knows Arnold is like the most, famous, probably bodybuilder, and who then became obviously very famous movie star, etc. But I think he had like one bicep or something that looks different. It looks different than the other one. It wasn't that he shaped it in a different way. He just grew them, and they grew differently. Like they didn't look the same. And I think people need to realize that you're never going to be that. You're never going to have perfect symmetry with your body. You're going to have different look to someone else on Instagram, etc. So that's usually the main goal for people. It's the same for you. It's the same for me. And then you realize that how you make you feel, it's also mental health, right? Because you feel better when you train. And if you don't train, you feel a bit, when you're in a good, here's the kicker with that, right? It's like, if you're in a good period of training and you don't train, or you miss a training session, or you miss a day, you don't feel good about it. But if you're potentially in a period, or if you're someone who doesn't train at the moment, and then you do a training session, then that's going to make you feel bad. And sometimes it even makes people feel like I'm never going to do that again. I just got so sore, blah, blah, blah. But what would you say to that? Like, what would your recommendation? We get that sometimes people come in, and they almost feel like they don't want to come back because they get sore, even though we haven't pushed them that hard. But it's just because you're doing something new. Yeah. What's your number one tip for that, to overcome that first training session, that first week, wherever it might be?
Just do another one. You'll feel better after the next one. Like each time you do it, it gets easier. Just keep focusing on that next session. Once you get to that point where you're consistent of 2 weeks to 3 weeks, then you start to get that balance and you start to feel a lot better.
Well, it's the consistency, right? It's and you're never going to be as sore every time if you keep doing it. If you have like momentum with it, you get sore, but you're never going to get that initial soreness again. I don't think you can. Well, you can if you. We don't train for soreness, though. That's also another important point. It's some people believe that if you don't get sore, it hasn't done much for you, but that's not necessarily true, right? Is it?
No, it's not a good indicator at all.
Hold on, I'll edit this out after Charlie's talking to me.
Yeah.
Yes, Charlie. Yeah. All right. No, so that's not a good indicator, right? It's probably an indicator just that you've done something that your muscles aren't used to.
Yeah, definitely.
If that's the first time, or if it's 2 years in, you can still get sore because you might be getting different stimulus to the muscles, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of, so let's continue on. So your 3 reasons for training. One was aesthetics, right? You want to look better and feel better, and then you touched on confidence, because to be honest, if you feel, it's not always about the look, but if you feel fit and you possibly changed your body in any way, like you've gained some muscle, lost some fat, you're going to feel more confident in any situation in life. I believe you feel better about yourself. Then you had is there any performance aspect to your training at the moment? Because you've had periods where you wanted to lift heavier and do this, and
chasing a few numbers in my head in terms of my lifts, but they're not all the B's or ends all to me. Like if I get there, I get there. They're just, to me, more of a byproduct of me training well.
Yeah.
For like bench press and my deadlift. And that's pretty much it in terms of performance.
It's a little bit, I think, because you've been an athlete, or I'm not saying you're not an athlete now. I'm saying you always have that little bit within that you want to have some kind of goals, right?
Yeah.
You want to reach something. You don't want to just grind all the time. You want to sort of see that you're getting better. So I think that's probably a little bit in you. Like I know that when we train at the gym sometimes, and there's a lot of banter, and we say, "Oh, you couldn't do that," and then I know I've seen you go in there and just do it because someone said you couldn't. So there's always that's like probably the athlete part of you still kicking in, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's always competitiveness deep down for myself and a lot of people, I imagine.
Speaking of competitiveness, it's to me, I feel like being competitive has helped me a lot with achieving fitness or even training in general. Like even now that I train like a general population and not an athlete, I still feel like if you have a little bit of competitive in you, you get a little bit further with your training because you will want to go a little bit heavier next time and you will want to reach a little bit further on that rower than you did last time. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Like I remember that before we were locked down, like I failed on my bench and like it was hurting me until I could do it again to make sure I got it.
Yeah.
That's the
And um, it's not necessarily that it's going to be like take you anywhere different. It's just a little bit slower, right? When you miss something. But on the other hand, it's fun for someone like yourself who's been an athlete. It's always going to be fun when you hit benchmarks, personal bests, or something like that, right?
yeah, makes you feel good.
With the training you're doing now, have you got any goals in terms of reaching into footy again, or like obviously when that opens up and we can do it? Is that something you want to get started with again?
Yeah, well, I'm planning on playing next season. So kind of in a extended preseason is what I'm telling myself it is.
Yeah.
Keep me going. Just kind of looking to get a little bit leaner, a little bit probably quicker on my feet for next season.
Well, you want to lose a little bit of body fat to be a little bit faster, right?
Yeah.
So this is in terms of like, so that's an athlete's point of view, but it's also correlates with real life for the general population. I think if you're a little bit lighter, everything gets a little bit easier, even if it's just walking or getting up from the stairs, getting up from the couch, whatever it might be. I did the session on Sunday, and I added I called it the half get up, which is basically where you just sit down on the floor and then you get up again with one side at a time. Because I think a lot of people don't realize that you never really get down on the floor as an adult anymore, and you stand up again. But it's an important skill to have if you do end up on the floor, right? If you can't help yourself up. So it's those sort of things like I find quite interesting where as a kid, you're on the floor all the time and everything's so easy, right? What would you recommend for people now? You're 23. What would you have done differently with your training, say 7 years ago when you got into training yourself?
I think just the importance of everything needs to be in balance. Like I look at like the body, there's no point doing 2 push and 1 pull. Like you want everything to be balanced for long-term health, shoulder health, everything along those lines. It's just about always looking towards the future more so than just now.
And you'll probably be doing a little bit more of that mobility work and accessory stuff that we probably still you and me both consider it quite boring, right? But it's not our preference. But if I had my time again, I'd definitely try and work a little bit more on that. It's never too late though. It's never too late to start. I think I train now for obviously I always say keep up with my kids and although today I took them out after I'd done training session, which was because I can't keep up with them. It takes a little bit of time to recover. but I think I train for that. And I say I train for life, which I feel like it's a little bit of a cliche, but I train so that now I'm in my mid 40s. I want to be able to do the things I do now in another 20 years time when I'm 65 as well. Um,
Definitely.
and even if it's not going to save your life, it could though,
Yeah.
right? We've talked about this before and as well with because if you build strength when you're younger, and I still consider myself young, right? we get if you build strength now or when you're younger, you're going to be a hell of a lot easier to when you get older. You have more muscle, so we're all losing muscle as we grow older, unless you maintain it by training with weights, etc.
Yeah.
But for example, I don't want to be the person that has a trip when you're in your 70s, but you're too weak to correct the fall, and you fall and break your hip, or that's
Yeah.
what we want to prevent as well. Create bone density, etc., but also muscle mass and reaction things that you can save yourself from those things. So, for someone who doesn't like weight training, what would you say to them, and why should they still do it? Someone who just runs, for example.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think like nothing can replicate weight training. Like if you're, let's say you're a cardio person, there's lots of different ways you can get your cardio in, but the only way to get strength or improve your muscle mass, get your bone density up and that is ultimately through weightlifting. Like even if you were to do body weight high repetitions, that's now a different beast on its own. That's more towards the endurance. If you, the only way to get strength is by lifting weights. So you kind of just got to jump in the deep end, get into it.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, some people might argue that they get a little bit stronger by running, and yeah, you get a little bit stronger uh, for running. I'd say, like, you get better at running by running. You get better cardio by running, but there's a lot of impact with running, and a lot of people don't um, realize the impact on knees and hips, etc. If you do a lot of pounding on the pavement, right? Whilst when we talk weight training, we're not talking one RMs or one rep max lifts. We're talking just building strength, not necessarily going to failure, but just leaving a few reps in the tank to build up slowly, safely, right? Safely.
Yeah,
But it's
trying to
also
prepare,
that. Sorry, you go.
trying to like I look at it as like trying to prepare your body for any case scenario. So whatever you do, you're ready and you're capable of doing it. Where if you do something where that's the only thing you do, there's so many different options that you can't do. Wow.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. We, in terms of the training, we do a big five. Like I know we do the group training with so what we used to call team training, the move sessions now. They're probably not. They're all resistance based. They're probably not always so resistance the way we would like people to do them. And we've discussed it before, and how can we get people to possibly grab a heavier dumbbell? Because if you keep, if let's say you're doing goblet squats and you constantly just go to the 12.5 kilo dumbbell, you're never actually really improving that. We found that this was one good thing that came out of the gym closure when we went and trained people in the park 2-on-1, and we had a limited amount of weights with us. We sort of made people like, hey, that's what I've got, you got to grab it. And all of a sudden people lifting 10 kilos more than they would have done in the gym. So what would you like, your tip to someone who thinks that the weight is too heavy? How would you get started with like maybe moving up to the next one? And why should they do it? Why should they not just keep, because some people might think, oh, I'm just moving, I'm just doing my 10 kilo dumbbell, and that's fine. I don't need to lift. I don't want to get bulky, for example. Like what's your tip there for like, or what, not tip, but maybe what's your thoughts on why they should not be scared of getting bulky first, and why they should be moving up in weight?
Yeah, so I'll kind of start with why I think people should move up in weights. And that's the way I kind of see it is if you're going to lift that 12.5 every time, it actually gets easier every time you lift it. So therefore, you're not doing the same amount of work. You're not going to get the same results. Even if your goal is maintenance, you're suddenly not working harder or hard as what you were previously. So you're starting to almost lose or not getting as much benefit. So by going that next step, you're still training at the same intensity every time, even if it's heavier or harder in terms of numbers.
Yeah.
But physiologically, it's not. And in terms of that old saying, I don't want to get bulky or anything, like, I promise you, you're never going to get bulky unless you train to get bulky, which isn't lifting heavy. It's beast of its own. Like, that's ultimately that Arnold Schwarzenegger type training where high reps, heavy weight, grinding stuff out, which is not what we ever do at Big Five.
And you really, when people talk about bulky, there's different ways of looking at it. I think the way you get bulky as well is that you can only get bulky if you eat too much, right? But most of our people want to get so then you look at that instead. It's a diet thing more. Like if you start lifting heavier and heavier weights, you're just going to get stronger. Preferably, but specifically females don't, it's really hard for females. Like, even look at me, like I've been trying to build muscle for years, and it's not that easy unless you really get into periods of focusing on it. But especially females don't have enough or as much testosterone as men. So it's a lot harder for females to build muscle mass as well, right?
Yep.
So very rarely do we see girls get too bulky. If you look at Instagram where you think someone is too bulky, that person has probably trained like that for 15 years or something like to get to that, and they really wanted to get to that. It was not a mistake.
Yeah.
It wasn't just happening by doing some group training and high intensity workouts.
You don't wake up one day and all of a sudden you're bulky. Like, that never
takes years of dedication to it.
Yeah.
Right. And then you might look a little bit bulkier, but usually it's because if you've gained fat, right? If you gain body fat, you look bigger, right? So if I and everyone builds or gains body fat, different spots, right? So for myself, I never really gain it where I would like to gain body fat. If I wanted to gain body fat, I wanted to gain it like up on my shoulders so I look bigger, but instead I just gain it around my waist, and I still look skinny in my arms and stuff. So for me, it's like it's not my preferred way of looking, but it's also about feeling right. Yeah, you yourself had a little bit of a transformation, if you may say, in the last 6, 7, 8 months. Nearly, you're taking your time, right?
Yeah, so kind of from almost New Year's, dropped 8 kilos since then. So down, kind of got to a point now where pretty happy with my weight and stayed steady since for probably 2 or 3 months now. I haven't kind of dropped much weight, to stay exactly where I am, and feel pretty good.
I'll give people the secret is, but then I'll let you tell them exactly like what you've done. But the secret is that Zach ate less calories than he burned. That's how he did it, right? So in any way or form, he ate just enough to be in a deficit from his maintenance calories, and that's how he lost it, right? So how you did it? You trained and you ate less, I'm guessing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Did you have any specific? Because you set yourself up on a training program that you followed really strictly, and it was during the time when we sort of opening, shutting, and the gym, and pretty stressful times. But you stuck to that. But before that, what did you do in terms of your nutrition or your diet? What did you change?
Probably it didn't change too much. I just made everything smaller or ate less of it. I cut out a lot of my bad stuff that I was eating, so that takeaway and the snacky more food. So cut as much of that as I could out, and just made all my portions smaller. So basically, I ate much the same, just less. Comes back to the calories.
The secret, eh? The secret. Yeah. Eating less and moving more, right? Potentially, you didn't even move more because you probably trained about the same most of the time. Like, we're all up and down with our training, but I would say this is for, and obviously I own a gym, you're a personal trainer. It'd be great if we could say to people like, "Oh, you don't have to change your diet. You just have to come in and train with us, and you'll lose your weight." But it doesn't work like that, right? You still have to look after the calories. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, bottom line.
But well done. You've you definitely people started to notice as well in the end, where
Yep.
which is quite a nice feeling. Bring get your confidence up again, and when you yeah. All right, Zach. We were gonna do a few more of these chats, so today probably leave it so we don't go for too long. But yeah, thank you. People know a little bit of how you started, know a little bit about your why you train now, and we talked about your transformation, etc. So, do you have any final words for today? Any tips? Any tricks? Any advice for our probably many listeners to this?
The thousands.
Yeah,
Yeah, if more than anything at the moment, just reach out to myself or you if you need any help or if you want any advice in this time. We're still running our onlines. We can set you up with some nutrition stuff if you want to use this time to shred. I know I've started again trying to go. I've got more time on my hand. Let's shred. There's lots of different ways you can do stuff at the moment. So if you want any advice, just reach out to either of us, and we're happy to help.
yeah, definitely. So we obviously during this it's about not getting too far away from what your goals were before it, right? That's where we want, but we can get a step further. Like both you and I are now with training. I'm training more. I'm moving more and training more than ever. My nutrition is still not 100% on point, but I'm trying to just keep it simple and just moving a lot as much as we can. So yeah, if anyone obviously needs some tips and tricks, if anyone wants a private session on Zoom, we'll do that as well. We'll join you, help you out with some form if there's anything specific that you want help with, and yeah.
Yeah, we spoke about some weights today. If you've got some weights at home and you want some more weight-based sessions rather than that body weight, reach out. We can set you up with a program for weights on Keystone. We can help you in lots of different ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Zach. We'll go from there, and we'll chat to you again next week.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, mate. Bye.